Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sami Speaks. I'm Jeff Borschowa, your co host, and I'm excited to have my friend Sami Steigmann with me again today. Sami, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
All right. Now, today we are going to talk about, and this will make sense to those who see the big picture. Today we're going to talk about your family and your transition from living in Europe to Israel. Would you like to walk me through that point in your story?
Okay. I don't know. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so at what point was it that your family left Europe and transitioned to Israel? What was the timeline of that
Right.
transition?
Well, uh, when we lived in Romania, okay, we came from the former Soviet Union in 1946. So in 1949, my father applied to go to Israel. But this is Romania was a socialist communist country, so you don't get the visa when you want. So it took 12 years, and uh, after the Romanian government was also bribed, in 1961 we finally got the visa. Uh, uh, and the same day, uh, they took my father. They arrested him. They didn't tell him why. Absolutely nothing. Uh, okay, so he wanted to ask why was he arrested,
Right.
and they told me to shut up. Okay, so we did not want to leave without him, and in the last minute, finally they let him go, and then we decided to go to Israel. On the train, because we went through Zagreb. On the train, I had a chess set, I had some other things, pictures, and they took it away. And I asked them why. Oh, we just want to check, but you can always come back and pick it up. Sure, we are going to come back, right? Okay,
Of course.
of course. So anyway, so it was just in spite and everything else. So anyway, that's what happened.
Okay, and I think it's worth noting. I think a lot of people, if we grew up on a diet of Hollywood and modern era, I think a lot of people think that hatred and evil were defeated on the day that Hitler and Germany surrendered. But I think it's fair to say that some of that ignorance and hatred continued. Even you were on the train, you were still dealing with some biases and prejudices. Is that fair?
Yes. Well, one of the things that I do is I don't like the word anti-Semitism. The word anti-Semitism can be interpreted as another form of hate. However, it's totally separate from hate itself. Okay, and you can hate people or groups of people for various reasons, but Jew hatred is very, very specific, and we have to be very precise with the words that we use. So when you use the word Jew hatred, that has nothing to do with hate. Okay, it's not a different form of hate. It's specific just to one. Okay, hate is not specific. So that is my major distinction. And just what happened during the war, what's happening today. Hitler and the Minister of Propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, said a lie told long enough for misrepresentation becomes the truth. And that's why I'm saying we
Yeah.
have to repeat that over and over and over until it will change the name from anti-Semitism to Jew hatred.
And I think that's worth repeating. The problem with lies is they get repeated over and over and over again. Whereas I think when it comes to the truth, people say it and think it's self-evident and walk away saying, okay, I told the truth. But, we're clearly living in an age where Jew hatred is still rampant, and, hatred in general is still.
Well, Jew hatred is 4,000 years old. So it's nothing new.
So,
The only thing that changes, so it started initially, because of religion, because Jesus and all the apostles were Jews. How do you create a new religion
yeah.
from the religion you come from? So you have to demonize the religion that you came from. Then it became economically. People do not understand that Jews were not allowed to go to universities. So they lived in the small towns. Okay, they were not rich or whatever it is. They were not represented in the government. So things have changed because of the media. Right now, you have Israel, you have Zionism. It's constantly taking a different form. Okay, people are forgetting that the Jews were, how to say, sent out, expelled from Germany,
Yeah.
from Britain, from France, from other countries, Spain. People are forgetting. The biggest problem that we're having today is people look at what's happening today without understanding the history. How did it come to that?
And I think that's one of my goals for our conversations is to put it in historical context, because this is not a new problem. It's not something that, has evolved over the last century. It's something that's continued to grow. And that's one of the problems with hate, is when you let it grow unchecked, it just festers like a disease and keeps growing.
Well, I'm going to repeat something that I said before. But the way I say it is that there is a virus that can never be eradicated. That is bullying, bigotry, Jew hatred, hate, racism, and ideology. It will always be. They will just take different forms. The only way that we can combat it is only through education.
Yeah.
There are other forms, but I would say through education, starting at a very young age, instead of teaching hate, and to teach them love.
And I think that's, we've talked about this before, but for me personally, hatred is exhausting. And I mean it as a, if I was to choose to carry it, I feel like it's a heavy burden. Whereas love is, freeing, and it's also light and easy to carry. It doesn't cost me anything to love you, as opposed to if I wanted to choose to hate someone, that becomes exhausting, and I carry that energy with me.
Yes, that is correct.
And I think a lot of people miss that, and they dismiss it and say, "Oh, it's just the way it is." But one of the things I'd like,
but
go ahead.
There is something missing in their lives, and they are unhappy, so they are trying to find a way, to blame the unhappiness on somebody else or the different groups, or at the same time, circumstances. So they have to find a release of their unhappiness. But like you said, it's a burden. But this is the way some people deal with their unhappiness, and it's normal. If things go wrong in their lives, they have a tendency, instead of taking responsibility, how do they come to that point? To blame other people, other groups, or circumstances. And that is not, it will always be there. It will always be there.
And that's the sad thing, is when you let other circumstances dictate how you feel and you tie your sense of worth to others, you're always going to feel less than, because you're always in comparative mode. And I find it fascinating, because one of my mentors, he said, until you realize that the only person who is responsible for how you feel is yourself, you're going to be a victim all your life, as opposed to being able to set free.
What I'm saying, to be victimized, is universal.
Yeah.
Victimhood is optional.
Yeah.
That's the way I say it. That's the way I tell the kids, to understand that what can make you a victim.
And I think that's, again, things happen. Whether we like them the way they happen or not is up to us to decide. Do I choose to just accept it and say, okay, well, I can't change that, therefore I'm victim, or say, I'm going to find a different way around this. And I think Viktor Frankl, with his work on man's search for meaning, it was very much about, we choose how we feel about what happens to us.
Correct. Same thing as, I was homeless. I live under the poverty line, but I have many reasons to be bitter, angry, revengeful. But I decided to do something which people don't do, and I took responsibility. What did I do to lead to the point that I became homeless? And I became a free man. And once I took responsibility, I was able to move forward. And right now, there is no anger, no hate, no feeling for revenge, nothing. It was part of my life. I am right now moving forward. There is a book called The Choice by Edith Eger, and she coined a phrase. She said that we are prisoners of our own mind. And when you take responsibility, okay, you become liberated from that prison.
Yeah. And there's a lot of versions of that from the philosophers. There's one that says we can have heaven or hell on earth, we choose which. And I find that a fascinating thought, because, again, coming back to our conversation, those who choose to spread hatred and carry it, they're going to suffer 1,000 eternities of hell in one lifetime. Whereas those who choose to see love and kindness are going to experience heaven long before they leave this earth. So I think it's an interesting, it's fascinating to me how some of the oldest philosophers are still highly relevant today. And, yet we have all of this wisdom from our accumulated history, and yet we still make the same mistakes.
Well, you mentioned hell in heaven. Hell in heaven. You also have to understand that people that that believe in fate have faith. Okay, they believe that, but don't forget that you have also a lot of people that are agnostic. For them, hell and heaven have no relevance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
yes.
Okay, so you also have to be very careful not to generalize, because you have a lot of people that. One of the unfortunate things that happened, I can talk only about the United States, not about Canada, is that God has been taken out from school. And people felt different, they had a different attitude when God was part of the curriculum.
Yeah. And I think that's, it's a general differentiation. I think we're trying to be more secular. And for the record, I use terms heaven and hell very generally to be, a state of bliss versus a state of torment. We can have our own inner demons.
Right.
Now let's go back to when your family first arrived in Israel. What was the mood like in Israel? What was happening as your family settled there, and how did that progress?
Well, it was a period of time that there was a lot of discrimination, not only from the Europeans, but it was also for instance, among Europeans themselves. When we came there in 1961, believe it or not, somebody from Poland would not hire somebody from Romania. So it was not only against the people from the Middle East. The military was basically the melting pot. The reason that there was the discrimination is because we did not have a common language. The culture was different because each one brought their culture from the countries where they grew up. There was no way of communication. So there was a lot of misconceptions and everything else. But again, like I said before, the military was the melting pot. And it's the only nation in the world that we still use the language and still use the ancient language.
Yeah. And, it is interesting because I think, when a lot of people think about, there's a lot of confusion about the Jewish culture because a lot of Jewish groups migrated at different times in history. They were, forced to flee at different times. I don't think a lot of people recognize that literally, as you said, it's a melting pot of vastly different language. Customs would have evolved. I'm sure even something as seemingly simple as a service, a religious service, you're still going to have different people disagreeing on how the service should be conducted.
Well, part of the issue that we are dealing with is that a lot of people are coming to new countries, but they want to keep their own traditions and are not really assimilating. So therefore, they do not become part of the fiber of the country that they decided to emigrate to. And that is something that it's an issue that right now we are dealing with. So why would you want, for instance, like to give an example with the Islamists, I'm not saying everybody, but why would you want to bring Sharia law to the United States? Okay, you are in a different country. You decided to come here willingly. Why would you want keep it to yourself? But why would you want to make it the law to become the standard? Okay, so they are willing to assimilate. So I'm not generalizing, but I'm saying, you have so many Muslims, and if you take even 0.1%, 0.1, not 1%, okay, you have millions of people that believe in that. So it's an issue.
Yeah.
So I said it before, but I'm saying again. I lived in Romania, I lived in Israel, and I'm living right now in the United States. However, I am not a Romanian. I'm not a Jewish Romanian. I am not, for instance, Israeli American. I'm an American. Okay,
Yeah.
when you use the word American that unites. It's the only country here that people identify by the country of origin. And but I'm very proud of my heritage. So people, instead of using Afro-American, Jewish American, Italian American, we live here. We came willingly. We have been accepted. So we assimilated. So we are American, but very proud of our heritage.
Yeah.
Everybody should teach the heritage to their children, their grandchildren. But nevertheless, we are one nation. We are American. And so I call myself, I'm an American, but very proud of Jew.
And that's a great distinction, because I think, here in Canada, we've got, I think from the beginning, the U.S. was proudly a melting pot. Canada tried to keep the mosaic alive. And I think, for better or worse, we have done that. But the problem becomes people tend to identify with where they're from more so than where they are. And, honestly, it creates a lot of friction, because people aren't here to fit in. They're here to preserve their culture. And it sometimes conflicts. You can't do both simultaneously, not always. And I think, the melting pot makes more sense. And, I would argue, just by definition and by virtue of being a melting pot, going back to Israel, you mentioned the military was the melting pot. We still need something that unifies us under the flag that we've all chosen to live under.
Right. But okay, I will clarify something from what you say. Okay, so like for instance, I am an American, but I still go to the synagogue. I still keep my traditions and everything else that I grew up. So you can do both of them, but primarily I am an American. Okay, being Jew is also my identity. Okay, it's the same thing like I'm a man. I cannot define what does it mean to be a man, what does it mean to be a woman. Same thing, what does it mean to be a Jew? It's something that you grow up, it's part of who you are. But living here, okay, I am not a Jewish American, I'm restating it. First, I'm an American, and then I'm a very proud Jew in keeping my traditions. So you can do both, in my opinion. At least that's the way I think.
I think where I'm going is you need that unifying front first, so that we can all agree to coexist and recognize your synagogue. Maybe I have a church. We
Right.
learn to accept those, but we also all follow the common law of this is the law of the land.
But you grew up something else in a different country. But you are right now in Canada. So from my perspective, maybe you feel that way or not. But you are, first of all, you are a Canadian. You are not German anymore. You are a Canadian. But you are very proud of your heritage. Growing up in German, keeping the tradition, whatever it is.
Yeah.
But you are a Canadian and I'm an American.
Yeah. And again, we're all citizens of.
That is the unifying. Okay.
Yeah.
Identifying with the country that you live, being assimilated. That is the unifying force.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, we all live on the same little blue marbles floating in space. So, you being American, me being Canadian, we're still Earthlings. We still have that in common, and we're human. So, again, it's so much easier to play the love game than the hate game, because the hate game is exhausting. It's like, okay, I'm going to hate you because you've got less hair than me. There we go. That's my arbitrary reason for hating. Whew, that's exhausting.
Okay. That's why I'm saying I don't like the word anti-Semitism, because it can be used. Yeah, people know it's against Jews, but they can be used in another form of hate. It is not. It it's totally different from hate itself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now let's talk about language, because I believe language matters. And I've had mixed reports from my friends on this. Um, some people have told me that you can't use the word Jew unless you're Jewish, whereas for me, it's a word of respect, and obviously, I recognize for a lot of people it's a word of hatred. Is it still politically correct for non-Jewish people to talk about Jew hatred in the sense of we want to eradicate it? I just want to make sure we're using non-offensive language.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I've been told by a few of my Jewish friends that I'm not Jewish, therefore I can't use the word Jew.
That's not true. That is,
Okay, thank you.
that is completely idiotic. Okay. So if you're Christian, and if I'm not Christian, I cannot say that you're Christian. It's idiotic. Whoever said it, I mean, it's a, it's you have to be precise with the words. So we are on the same page, because words can be interpreted differently, the same words by different people depending on their background, where they came from. Okay, but not to be able to use the word Jew because you're not Jewish, that, in my opinion, is completely the end. So, what do you want to call me? If you cannot call me a Jew, what can you call me?
That was what I was kind of struggling with. I'm like, okay, do I call you non-Christian? And while we're on language, I think, I want to come back to anti-Semitism, because I feel like it's almost this.
Again, start using the word, okay, Jew hatred.
I will use Jew hatred. I just want to point out that anti-Semitism almost feels like a soothing word for people who don't want to sound too unaware, but they also don't want to sound too involved. It's almost a passive description. It sounds less terrible, and I think that's part of the reason we're going to talk about Jew hatred. Anti-Semitism almost sounds like something, oh, he's anti-Semitic. It's almost like a medical condition and we have to excuse it. Whereas if we say somebody's a Jew hater, that's a little more clear. Is that fair?
That's fair enough. That's exactly why when I go to schools and everything else, I use Jew hatred.
And I think, really, if we're talking about bullies in general, let's start calling them what they are, not, sugarcoating it or softening it. A bully is a bully, whether they pick on a person or a religion or a country. A bully is something that we should all agree we should stand up to.
The same thing, for instance, when I use the word Jew hater, okay, it may not register for the first time, but if I say it often enough, okay, it becomes acceptable and people use it the same thing. So that's why, okay, we have to use the proper words and repeat it over and over until it becomes the norm. So right now, for instance, a lot of the things have been normalized. So this is a strange word. Right is wrong and wrong is right.
Yeah. And normalized is the word I think I was looking for with anti-Semitism. It's, right after World War II, it was shocking. It was the images of the camps and the death and the suffering. And now it's almost sanitized for, a Sunday afternoon opinion article on, describing somebody's likes and dislikes. It's too soft now.
Right. Okay. People are afraid. Okay. All right. Let's assume that you have a certain condition, whether it's mental, physical, whatever it is. First of all, cannot move forward unless you admit it. Hold on 1 second. Who is it? Who is this? Okay. Okay, I can't get rid of it. Okay. Okay. I can't get rid of it. Okay. She'll stop. Okay. Okay. She stopped. Okay. Okay. I'll call. Okay. 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 Thank you. Okay. Very good. Where was I?
We were talking about how anti-Semitism had been normalized,
Right.
and
So what I'm saying is, if you have a particular condition, you have to be able, or a trauma you're going through, you have to be able to admit that you have that issue with you. Then
yeah,
you can deal with it. But if you are ignoring it, then you don't admit that you have that particular issue to deal with, you cannot solve it. And that's why it's very important to, I use a different word, and I use to take responsibility.
yeah.
Okay. How did I become a free man? Because I was betrayed by people that I trusted. Is I took responsibility. I did something.
Yeah.
Then what I said to myself, because I did the wrong things, okay, they are not guilty because, okay, they took advantage of my stupidity, of my mistakes,
Yeah.
and that escalated. And that's, in my opinion, is taking responsibility for your own actions and not to dwell on it, but to learn from it and move forward.
And I'd like to underline, when it comes to responsibility, when we take it, it actually sets us free. And as you said, we can't, whatever the thing is, we can't heal it, repair it, move forward until we do take responsibility.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the problems, is the world doesn't want to take responsibility, or doesn't know how to, for the rise of Jew hatred, or, again, let's call it what it is, the existence of it, because it's always been there.
Well,
And I think,
when you use the word "the world," I'm talking about specifically is the leaders of that particular country.
yeah,
Okay, and then they use the platform that they have, the media, and everything else, and that becomes the normal. And so it's it, the world is basically conducted by the leaders of that particular country.
yeah. And at a micro level, it comes down to the leaders in a community or in a school. It comes down
Right.
to the teachers, and of course there's school student leadership, which I love that you foster, because I think by empowering youth to, number one, be curious, but number two, to learn about these things, it's fascinating, but it's really hard for hatred to survive when two parties get to know each other. Going back to World War II, there's all kinds of examples of prisoners and their captors getting to know each other and realizing you're not so bad. World War One, they sang Christmas carols on Christmas Eve, for crying out loud.
Well, I'll give you a personal example so your audience will understand. Because of my father's side, of 42 people, only two survived. My father, okay, vowed to himself he will never go to Germany. He will never buy any German products. living at home with my parents, I felt the same way. But when I started to talk, I started to speak about reconciliation. Intellectually, it's very easy to talk about it. And I was challenged to go to Germany to meet with descendants of high-ranking Nazi criminals. So I was hesitant because I did not know how I feel about it.
Yes.
But I decided to be authentic. I decided to go, and I made friends with some of the people. We learned things from each other, and it's totally different when you talk to somebody. And when I talk to the next generation, I say we hate people because we don't know them. We don't know them because we hate them. So we have to talk. And at the same time, do not stereotype. So, for instance, if I'm talking to you, if I like you, does not mean that every Canadian or that every German or that every Christian is good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like it doesn't mean that everybody is bad. You know? So I have to be very specific to relate to talk to you, treat you as an individual, not as a group.
Yeah.
And this is part of the problem that people say Jews. Which Jews are you talking about? Because they are so different. Okay, we are from Hungary, from Romania, from Russia, from Argentina. Okay, from the Middle East. Which Jew are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, we have the same religion, but our culture is the culture that we came from. I do
Yeah.
not know, okay, the culture from Iran. There are Jews in Iran. I don't know their culture.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't identify with their culture. Okay, but we are okay. So when people are saying, all the Muslims, which Muslims are you talking about? You have, for instance, the Muslim from Uzbekistan. They received the Jews of World War II with open arms. Which, okay, Albania. Which Muslims are you talking about? And that's where people use the word Muslim. Okay, doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
They don't
Well,
know what they're talking about.
and it's fascinating because let's pretend there was somebody, two Jewish families that made the exact same journey. Maybe they went from homelands in Israel to somewhere in Russia and then came to the United States. But if they made that journey more than 100 years apart, two very different cultures would emerge.
Right.
It's you're ignoring the or you, not you, but the world in general. We're when we generalize, we're ignoring the unique experiences that each one person of us has. And it's fascinating. But I mean, I have three siblings. You could say we're all alike, but we're not. And that's in a similar bloodline, raised by the same parents. We all grew up and kept our own versions of our traditions. But I think a lot of people want to generalize because it's easy. And I'm going to be just really rude, but hatred is lazy, yet it's the hardest burden to carry. It's easy to hate if you don't want to get to know. I want to know Sammy. I want to know your story.
But
Um,
but there is one
and then
thing
it
that
expands.
but there is one thing that keep in mind. Okay, we are talking about forgiveness. Okay,
Yes.
remember, okay, that there are two ways to forgive. One of them is from here, intellectual, which is relatively easy. The other one is from here, which is very difficult. And I'll give you an example. A friend of mine, uh, he was okay. He had a partner, and the partner stole money from the business, okay, and destroyed her. And that was 40 years ago. And he said that he forgave, okay, that particular person. But when he started to talk, his voice started to raise. Okay. When I am talking about it, I forgave the people that put me in the position. Okay. to become homeless. My voice is not raising. Okay, I forgave from here. It's over. Okay, it was part of my life, but it's over for that particular person because he forgave from here, not from the heart. Okay, it's still, affecting him when he talks about that particular subject. So therefore, it's we have to be going back to being precise. That's exactly what I'm saying. That we have to precise. What do you mean by forgiving? From the head or from the heart? And there are two different things, and that's why using the right words and being on the same page is not easy.
Absolutely. And honestly, I think most of my life I've understood theoretical forgiveness. And, now as I'm older, I truly understand what it means to forgive in the heart. And honestly, it's the greatest gift I can give myself because, as you said, I'm not hanging on to that. And coming back to our earlier conversation, I'm not being victimized over and over by the story that I told myself about whatever the thing is that I'm carrying. So,
Thank you. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to stop it because you have to be with your kids. Okay?
awesome. Well, thank you for being with me again today, Sami.
Okay. See you next week.